Nickal versus Dricus Du Plessis for Bo's first time in the UFC. December 10th. What do you guys think? That's a hard fight. Dricus is a very good fighter. In my opinion, he's very good, and he's extremely aggressive. Hold on, I want to make this point, though, before I lose you guys. I was talking to you yesterday about what Bo should do. What Bo should do and where he could go, and I brought Khamzat Chimaev in. Now, I brought him in because Bo brought him in. And I realized that Chimaev's not going to fight Bo Nickal. No matter how much I argued it for you yesterday that it makes sense and we should do the fight. I understand that. I wasn't using Khamzat to be a literal Khamzat, though. I was using it to talk about a tough guy. A tough guy, a known guy. Let's get this figured out and let's do it right now. Now, I think that Dricus Du Plessis is a very hard fight. Before somebody thinks that Chael saw the card wrong, I've been telling you as calmly and for as long as I can, Dricus Du Plessis and Darren Till isn't going to happen. I will continue to tell you that until it turns out that I'm right. But as I look at the card, and Bo Nickal right now is scheduled for an undercard. Now, you got to understand this is Vegas and this is pay-per-view. It doesn't really matter how much hype you have behind you. Vegas and a pay-per-view is something special. You guys might remember back 7 weeks ago, Paddy the Baddy, for his second time, packed the O2 Arena. He got the loudest reception of the night. But he also showed that the skills matched the hype. That's the first time we really got to see the potential and the skills of Paddy the Baddy. He plastered flying colors. The media starts asking Dana about that. What are you going to do? Dana said, take the guy to Boston or New York. I don't know why those two cities. I wish there would have been a follow-up question. But Dana said we're going to take him to Boston or New York. We're going to get him on pay-per-view, and then we're going to bring him to Vegas. Now, we don't have all the reasons why. We don't know why Boston. We don't know why New York. We don't know why pay-per-view comes later and why Vegas is the ultimate home run. We don't know. There was no follow-up question, but these are still the words. So we know there's a formula within that somewhere. And Bo Nickal is going to start in Vegas for pay-per-view. And I must word it that way. Right now, the card and the way that it's laid out appears that Bo will be the main event of the undercard. Now, that is an extremely coveted spot, but guys don't understand it. All they hear is undercard. That's a completely different program with completely different programming, and you're going to main event that. To put that in perspective for you, on Conor McGregor's second fight, his second fight ever in the UFC, that's the exact spot that he had. He was the main event of the undercard. He was opposite Max Holloway. Big deal. Big deal that they're giving Bo this position. And I brought to you guys yesterday, December 10th is when Bo's going to be fighting, and he's going to be televised. And there wasn't any 85-pounders that spoke up. I found that odd. I find that very in line with what people do, never trying to get themselves an opportunity, pretending they want it all and pretending they're hungry and pretending they're sacrificing and telling anyone that will listen they should be getting more. But then when the opportunity comes to actually compete and do some heavy lifting, I just don't see a lot of it. Now, when I tell you that nobody called out Bo, that's a literal statement with one exception. Darren Till said, I'll fight him. Now, just so you understand where that's coming from. Darren, Chimaev, good buddies. Bo calls out Chimaev. Chimaev has other plans. As of right now, it's 185 pounds and it's Colby Covington. I realize those two don't go together. But Till, to show his support to Chimaev, is going to take on the guy that called him out, and Till said that he would do it. Now, I only bring that to you because Darren Till and Du Plessis, that fight's not going to happen. But I don't know which guy is going to be left without a partner. And Till has already said, I'll fight Bo. I believe you're going to have Bo versus Du Plessis, but you could end up having Bo versus Till. I just want to know what you guys think. Because I gave some really good reasons yesterday. I explained to you that build a fighter is not a thing. But once you have a fighter built, and I had some of you come in and push back and say, well, he'll get beat. And Right? I mean, there's a competitor inside here. What is your point on saying that Bo would get beat? Bo shows up to practice every day at Penn State. There's 3 guys in that room that can beat Bo. Just so you know, within the room, there's 3 guys. So this is not somebody that's afraid to compete. If I was to look at last year, removed from college and on the senior level, the only competitions that Bo entered, the only ones, were the bracket full of guys that could all beat him. And Bo could beat them too, but that's what they went out to contest. And that doesn't mean if overseas with the Iranian, of which Kyle Schneider was in the bracket. It doesn't matter if it was domestically, where he's got to deal with Zahid, and then he's got to deal with Taylor, and then he's got to deal with Taylor again in the same day. Bo only goes into competition that are going to be a potential problem for him. Now, if I was to look at history, let me tell you some other guys that did it. There's a guy named Islam Makhachev who's about to fight for a world championship. He lost his first fight that he ever did in the UFC. There was a good friend of mine named Pat Cummings who walked in on day 1 and took on Daniel Cormier. And this isn't back before we know who Cormier is. It was a co-main event spot of a pay-per-view only to be trumped by Ronda Rousey, which, by the way, became a #1 contenders match for Cormier because his next fight was against Jones for the belt. I'm just offering this. There was a guy from Brazil who was supposed to be a secret leg loss specialist, specifically a heel hook, named Husamar Pelhares, who debuted on pay-per-view opposite Dan Henderson, who had fought for multiple belts around the world. And Pelhares was very good at heel hooks and probably would have caught Dan. Probably would have caught him. I will just tell you, as Dan's teammate, that's a tricky position. But every one of Husamar's manager, Bustamante himself, who cornered and managed him, everybody involved with Husamar, told us all that he was going to heel hook Dan Henderson. So it was a pretty good clue for us over at Team Quest when we're preparing Dan Henderson, at any rate. At any rate. The idea of competition doesn't scare everybody. He could beat him. He could kick his ass. That's not a reason to not go and do it for everybody. You're talking about you when you say that, but you really are. Bo did not go on the mat with the Iranian last year knowing he was going to beat him. He knew I could lose this match. He did not go on the mat with Valencia knowing I can take care of you. He knew he could lose the match. Same thing with Taylor. But he walked out there anyway, and he volunteered to do it. Against Taylor, he did it twice in one day, and he was prepared to do it 3 times. Just so you understand who you're dealing with here. So when you have these guys that catch fire, when you have these guys that catch on, believe me, I know the idea of derailing him and why you think that that could be a bad idea. I will just share with you that Pelhares, who lost his first fight, went on and headlined 3 UFCs. Islam, who lost his first fight, is getting ready to be part of the biggest fight of the year. Pat Cummings went on, had 6 more contests. And the biggest star that the UFC has built, the biggest star that we have in the entire heavyweight division, is named Tai Tuivasa, who got beat up a few weeks ago by Ciryl Gane. But going into that fight, we knew he was going to get beat up. There was no protection for him. There was no coverage. Here you are, main event, 5 rounds against a guy who's only lost once. Oh, and you're going to fight him at home. Good luck, Tai. Did that damage Tai? Do any of you have less respect for Tai Tuivasa? Do any of you believe that he won't return to a main event? Do any of you believe he's not just one marquee win away from a world championship? I'm just sharing with you. There's 2 sides to it. I realize I had all of history to bring out and cherry pick some examples. But Bo Nickal versus Du Plessis, that's a good fight. Du Plessis is a straight-up badass. The very first time I saw this guy, I have never forgot. I don't even get names right. You guys know what a hard time I have saying names? Du Plessis. I took the time to learn his name because I respect him. This is a tough guy. He's going to be taking on Bo on very short notice unless he listens to me right now. Either Darren Till or Du Plessis is going to be fighting Bo Nickal. Or at least we'll have an opportunity to. Du Plessis and Till booked on the same card as Bo and John Doe. Du Plessis and Till is not going to happen. Okay? That part I got. That part I got. I don't know what side goes down. That fight doesn't take place. Now, I don't have the evidence that you grab Bo and move him up. I don't have the evidence that we're not going to just put Bo against John Doe. But I'm suggesting it for you. I'm creating the conversation. And you guys are going to agree with me. You're going to go, whoa, Du Plessis. That's a killer. Yeah, that's a killer. We're asking him to take on a guy who's undefeated and has 4 world championships. I don't have a problem with that fight. Fight makes a level of sense to me. I don't have a problem with Darren Till, who spoke up and said that he would do the fight. I don't think Darren Till needs to worry about Bo. I think he needs to worry about this Du Plessis business because this hasn't been called in yet. But trust me, it's coming.